All right, so now that time has arrived when I'm going to show you some really good scholarly commentaries on Daniel, primarily for you former Seventh-day Adventists, so that you can start to understand the book of Daniel properly, or for those of you that are non-Seventh-day Adventists like me, who've shied away from Bible prophecy because, as I've said before, it seems to attract the crazies and the nuts and the unbalanced, and it's just kind of turned you off to it. And besides, it does seem a little difficult when you start talking about beasts and horns and scary oceans. It's like, what does all that mean? And you just stay away from it. Well, I'm glad I didn't stay away from it because I've learned an immense amount, and I have such a deep respect. What I've learned in the book of Daniel, and I've been wrong in avoiding it, and so I'm glad that I have now delved into it. So I want to share with you what I've discovered. Like I said in the previous video, I've got over 30 now commentaries on Daniel, by far the biggest section in my entire library on any one book of the Bible. It's huge now, and it's full of wacky, crazy kooks and very well-respected conservative scholars. On the whole spectrum is covered. Here's my criteria for recommending Daniel commentaries to you. One, the scholar has to recognize that Daniel was actually written by Daniel in, roughly 553 BC. And again, I'm throwing out all those scholars who don't believe those 2 points there. I'll say more on that. Also, I'm using Daniel chapter 7 as my touchstone, as my point. I could use Daniel 7, 8, or 9. To me, I can pick up any commentary now and start reading Daniel 7, 8, and 9 and tell you about the scholar and what position they're coming from. So I'm just going to use Daniel 7, but I'll say more on that in a minute. Particularly Daniel 7, 1 through 8, when it describes the beast. The scholar, in my mind, is going to have to describe the same beast as Daniel 2. Got to make the parallel there. The head of gold and, the first beast, etc. Daniel 7, 9 through 12 portrays God as judging and annihilating. Let me say it again, annihilating that little horn or fourth beast. So I'm looking for that too. As it follows, you read Daniel 7, that's the progression. Then after that, we go Daniel 7, 13, and 14, where the Ancient of Days gives the kingdom to the Son of Man, to Christ, and a future event. So I'm looking for the scholars to properly address that which I just described. I'm basically looking for this, that prophecy from the fall of historic Rome, which we could say it's 476, or maybe it's the fall of Constantinople in 1453. You can pick one, but the fall of historic Rome is really the end of the prophecy that we know. And then there's prophecy yet to come in the future. That's the fourth beast, the little horn. That's God judging that fourth beast, annihilating it. The Son of Man comes, is presented to the Ancient of Days. He gets his kingdom forever. All that hasn't happened yet. And that's what I'm looking for in the books that I'm going to recommend to you. Those are sane, conservative, scholarly points. I'm also looking at Daniel 8:14, and that they say it's Antiochus Epiphanes. So with that, why consult these? Because there are people out there who are going to say, well, it's just me and my Bible. Okay, great. Unless you speak Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and you've got a large repertoire of historical understandings, there's just a lot you're not going to understand about the Word of God. God has gifted the church with wise men and women. Read Ephesians 4, 11, and 12. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. I look at a lot of my scholarly works around me, the ones that aren't silly nonsense. Some of them are, like right over here, My Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, Christadelphian. Except those, I look at a lot of these around here and I go, I have really sitting on my shelf the advice of very knowledgeable men and women in terms of areas of expertise that they have. God has equipped them to do just that. And it's actually helped me tremendously. So with that, I've recommended my friend. I want you to go to here. Here's a snapshot of his page according to the scriptures. Angel just did his first video on single volume Bible commentaries. What to get, what not to get, what to look for, what to watch out for. He's going to be producing more videos, getting much more specific on actual books of the Bible. I'm probably going to do the Daniel one for him. So a lot of this is probably going to be repeated in his when he gets to Daniel. We've already talked about that. But do go there and look at his video on commentaries. If you want to start studying the Bible, Angel is the best guy to go to ask this stuff. I go to him all the time and ask him. I was just with him yesterday and was asking him questions about certain scholarly works to either buy or avoid. And we did that. Now, I'm going to recommend that you buy some books. So how do you buy books? What you have here before you is where I go when I buy books. I go to all these places. Now let me say it like this. You see Thrift Books on the lower left-hand side. Thrift Books also sells their books on Abe Books and eBay. So you can go to Thrift Books directly or you'll find them on eBay. I truly go to all these places. Now, Book Finder, you see it in the center? Book Finder is the database of databases. When you go to Book Finder and search, you're going to search all these that you see on the screen in front of you and many, many others when you're looking for a book. Of course, now, Book Finder and Abe do not sell books. These are websites that sell space to book sellers. It's much like eBay. When you search eBay for books, eBay doesn't sell books. eBay makes a space available for merchants to come and post their books. Now, Amazon, probably a little bit of both. There are merchants and they will sell you books. Christian Discount, they sell you books. The thrift stores, books, if you go to them direct, they'll sell you books. Biblio, it's like Abe. They sell space on a server. And I go to all these all the time. I search them because you'll find prices will differ wildly. Now, how do you buy books? So look with me here. You're going to have to figure this out. Do I want a hardback or I do want a softback? Do I care if the pages are coming to me clean or they got a whole bunch of yellow highlighting on them? A dust jacket. Dust jacket is that paper cover that is surrounding the book. Now mine are in something called a Brodart. That's this shiny protective thing that you see here that protects the dust jacket. All my books that have dust jackets, I have them protected in Brodarts. So you got to figure this out. What do I want? By the way, let me say this about eBay and thrift store books. They are like the worst in describing books. They'll sell you a book, like this one here, Daniel, Joyce Baldwin. They'll say, Daniel, Joyce Baldwin, hardcover, printed in 1978. Okay. Are the pages clean? Does it have the dust jacket? Is it going to look like this when I buy it, or is it going to look like this when I buy it? I may want the dust jacket. I may want this with it. Oftentimes, eBay is the worst in terms of telling you, and the laziest booksellers of them all are on eBay because they don't take actual pictures of their books. They go scour the internet, find a picture of a book, and post it up there. Some book that someone probably sold 20 years ago. It's not the book that you're actually buying. So be careful when you read the descriptions. Here's how to approach it. If you don't see it actually in the description, then don't count on it being there. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out on risk and bought a book hoping the dust jacket's there and it's not there. Or hoping the pages are clean and they are just yellow and green highlighted all over the place. I don't want that. So be very careful when you do that. Let me just give you an example. Something to be cautious of in terms of, I'm going to recommend these commentaries to you. So you may like a particular commentator's comments on, let's just say, for example, Daniel 7, but you're going to find yourself at odds with their comments on some aspect of Daniel 9 or 10 or 12. So that's just something to be expected. Not just Daniel, it's going to be, any scholarly work. Oh, I might really like what they say about Matthew chapter 11, but when I get to Matthew chapter 5 and the Sermon on the Mount, it's not so good. Well, that's just going to happen anywhere. So beware, that's going to happen. Let me give you my caveat. My commentary, notes, and recommendations from hence on forward are based on my reading of Daniel 7, because I've done those videos. Because I did all that reading in Daniel 7, like I said, I could pick Daniel 7, 8, or 9 as my touch point in any of these commentaries, because they're going to be consistent, these commentators, on how they interpret those three key chapters. So I'm just using chapter 7. I'm going to show you my first 5 go-to books when I want to do anything with Daniel. And it starts right here with Joyce Baldwin. Yeah, Joyce, female. She's really good Old Testament scholar. This is volume 21 in the Tyndale series. You can see it's a small book, and it is short. Now, short commentaries have their pros and cons. I want to hear more from Joyce Baldwin. And, you know, the commentator has limited her in this book and its size. So there's the con, but there's the pro. This is my first go-to book right here on Daniel. I pick this one up all the time. It's my first one. Here's why I pick it up. Because it's short. I want to get a reliable conservative scholar's commentary and opinion on certain verses and words. I go here first. It's very short, very concise, to the point. She doesn't use a whole lot of Aramaic and Greek, which is both a pro and a con. Some people find it a con because as they're reading and you got the Hebrew words there, it's kind of disruptive. If you don't really know the Hebrew or the Aramaic, or you don't want to look it up, it can be disruptive to your reading. Maybe you want to know the Hebrew or Aramaic, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, in which case it's not disruptive. She's also shows some critical views of other scholars, which I find very useful. Now, let me give you another, my second go-to commentary is this one here by John C. Whitcomb. This is part of the Every Man's Bible commentary set. Remember, I said this in the previous video. Do not buy commentary sets. In every commentary set, you're going to have all-stars. You're going to have your stellar, reliable scholars. And then you're going to have the worthless knuckleheads, which you'll see at the end of the video. So don't ever buy a commentary set, because you want to get all stuck with all the losers. We're going to deal with just the best ones. This guy is a reputable Daniel and Old Testament scholar. He wrote a really good book on Darius the Mede. Unfortunately, he just passed away, I want to say no more than three years ago. They're all small paperback books in this case. By the way, this one here I showed you, my Joyce Baldwin, is a hardcover. It does come in paperback too. One of the benefits again, or you can say a con, it's short and concise. So, I mean, this is first book I pick up. This is the second book I pick up. I read these two short commentaries, two completely different authors writing at two completely different times, and it kind of gets me focused in my area. And then I'll start picking up my more scholarly works. And this one here has turned out to be one of my absolute favorites. It's volume 18 in this series. Again, don't buy the series, buy the book. Stephen Miller, The New American Commentary on Daniel. It's a really easy to read format. It's not technical. You're not going to read a lot of Hebrew and Aramaic. He also has lots of citations where he's critical of these critical scholars. Liberals is what I call them. He presents the 10 kingdoms as both literal and figurative. He kind of says, well, I can see how someone could believe this, and I can see how someone can believe that. He presents some comments where he shows alternate views, displays them, and says, here's why I'm critical of them. And which is also very helpful for us as we read it. A lot of good, useful biblical citations in here as he's explaining things to take you to other places in the Bible that will help you understand the book of Daniel here. Another favorite of mine, the one I go to like next in order, is this one here by Leon Wood, Commentary on Daniel. You can see here, I just did a random search, Abe Books, $22, and like you saw it on the previous two. This one here you're probably going to find used. I don't think they printed it anymore. So you can see it with the $22 is used. It's going to have some underlining. It's going to have a dust jacket. It's going to be a little bleached by the sun. So you get an idea, right, what some of the comments are and how booksellers list books. Again, this one, like the previous one, not technical, easy to read, moderate. He starts using now some transliterations. You'll see that sprinkled in the text here of Hebrew and Aramaic. He specifically refutes the notion that the papacy is the little horn. He specifically addresses it at Daniel 7:25 and says, no, it's not. It's absolutely silly. He has some critical comments for the antiquated King James translation and what it does in particular when it talks about throwing down the thrones. And he has a really good comment on that. The King James is not doing us any help by the language that it's using. And he acknowledges the book of Enoch, which I'm probably going to do a video on shortly, and its dependency on the book of Daniel. Now, the next one of my key all-stars, and you can see the graphic that you see on screen is going to be different from the actual graphic of the dust jacket of the book that I have in my hand, and that's typical of all these books. Different printings are going to have different covers. So if you're looking for a particular book and you're using this video and you say, oh, it's got a red cover, but you showed a green one. Yeah, that's the way it is. So anyway, I'm showing you a green one, but my cover is much more of a kind of a really dark brown. This guy here, absolutely, and I love this commentary, he just dismantles at least two critical scholars, liberal scholars. One, which you're going to see at the end of the video, by a guy named J.A. Montgomery, and another one named Rowley. This guy just dismantles them in his commentary. He gives an excellent historical introduction using history and his sources. It's just rich in support and references. He does make a point that the little horn of Daniel 7 is not the little horn of Daniel 8. Probably a video coming on that too, Seventh-day Adventist. And he believes the 10 horns are the 10 kings. So those are my first really 5 outstanding go-to books. Now, I have some honorable mention books that I want to share with you here. The first one, let me reach down here and get it. It's by the Wycliffe Bible Scholars. Now, this is just not a Daniel commentary, it's Daniel and the Minor Prophets. This is by far the shortest Daniel commentary I've got right now. Now, the commentator, his name is Robert Culver. I have other books by him. He is an excellent Old Testament scholar. And you'll find his Daniel commentaries, too, by the way, in other books. If you come across him, or you want to come across this, pick it up. Now, the Daniel commentary here is only just a few pages, so it's not very big. But if you want a Daniel commentary and you want 12 Minor Prophets, this is a deal. I mean, this book is $9. Hardcover, doesn't have a dust jacket. Everyone I see is usually red like this. No Hebrew, Aramaic, it's short, it's concise. And again, he's a reputable Daniel scholar. The next one, I really like this one. This guy, he was local to me here in, he's in Los Angeles, it was in Los Angeles County. Very easy to read, verse by verse commentary. Charles Feinberg. Short, concise, also a reputable commentator on the book of Revelation. So this is another one that I pick up always, all the time. I'll keep reading these books that I'm holding up to you. This is literally what I'll do. I'll pick up Daniel chapter 7 and I'll read all the books that I showed you. I'll read Daniel chapter 7 in each and every one of them. And yeah, I know I'm reading some of the same material over and over and over, but I don't mind doing that. Repetition is learning. But they're not all exactly the same, by the way, too, which you'll come to see. Here's another one I thought was very easy to read, not technical. Very casual writing style, Lehman Strauss. But he does talk about the pre-tribulation rapture and removal of the church, which I don't believe. I don't believe the text teaches it. But it doesn't mean that I can't read his commentary and glean, other useful aspects from it, because I can. And I still think it's a good commentary, and I recommend it, even though I disagree with that one point. Now, I have others I could mention, but I'm going to stop here. But I do want to show you my 2 favorite scholarly sources. And now this is where it can get a little expensive. Here's my first source here. This is a relatively new commentary on Daniel. I believe it's the year 2020. It's fairly easy to read. It's moderate in terms of its content. And what I mean by that, it's not a huge book. Some of the other ones I've already held up are just as big. But what he does do in this book, and this book is outstanding in his use of Aramaic and Hebrew. He is a prolific citer of the Kohler and Baumgartner set. I want you to look behind me where I'm pointing. Back here on the shelf, probably about this high, is a 5-volume set, black dust jackets. That's the Kohler and Baumgartner Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon. Now here's the downside of that. This book isn't all that expensive. It's $38 and some change, maybe $40. But that set back there, that's $400 to $500. So that's where, if you want to start looking things up, that's where it can get expensive. Here's something else I like what he's done in this book, and he's done it a lot. He calls them excursus. And one of the excursus that he does in Daniel chapter 7 is he just stops on the commentary and says, go see my excursus. In other words, go see my excursion, my additional writing on who the Son of Man is. And he critiques all the views of the Son of Man, the views that he doesn't agree with, and tells you why. And he goes, but this is the one I agree with. And he does that several times. Excellent book. What else he does in this book, which is excellent, he brings in called Ancient Near Eastern Parallels. And again, here's where it can get a little expensive. This is the seminal work of Mr. Pritchard in the early to mid 1960s, when the language for the Hittites was finally cracked, and clay tablets could be understood and read like they could never before. All these parallels to the Bible were discovered in ancient Near Eastern cultures. And he wrote this book in the 1960s, this ancient Near Eastern text, where all these clay tablets are transliterated. And so in this scholarly work that I just held up here, he references Pritchard's work over and over and over. And so it's a benefit that I have this, because I can go, oh, ancient Near Eastern text, page 356. I can go there. I can read these Hittite clay tablets and etc. And so, again, that's where it gets, it's a little more technical. It can be a little more expensive. He introduces a lot of helpful charts in his book. The next one I want to introduce you to is another new favorite of mine. I love this one by Paul Tanner. Again, brand new commentator, 2020. This by far is one of the biggest ones I have that I'm going to recommend. I got one just as big that I'm not recommending anyway. But this one here is great. By far the most, with the most detail on it. I mean, this thing is, is it over 800 pages? Yeah, it is. It's 800 pages back here in the scripture index. Very detailed explanations. Explanations are so detailed that sometimes in this book, 3/4 of the page are his footnotes of citations and additional explanations. He also cites very freely from the Kohler and Baumgartner set that you see back here, that black 5-volume set. And he also uses a lot of the ancient Near Eastern parallels that we see here in the James Pritchard books. He does also present critiques of alternate views. He does a lot of contrasting with the premillennial and amillennial views, and he tells you what view he particularly takes. Now, I just showed you my go-to books on Daniel. I have a few others, but I didn't want to turn this video and make it too long, but those are my go-to books. But what I do have for you are some notable mentions. Let me do my first notable mention for you here. Here is the this is a soft cover book. This one was printed in 1940, so if you're looking for it. By the way, I would recommend you get this. I like this book. Very good. By Lewis Talbot, 1940. By the way, pause with me here for just a second as I was doing this. As I was reading all these commentaries. Now, I didn't list this one in the video. This one was written in 1915 by a guy named W.C. Stevens, which I would still recommend you get, from 1915. Just to put all this Daniel chapter 7 in current context, here I am reading a book from 1915. There's no television. There's no radio in houses then. They barely have telephones, and if you're in a large city, you probably have electricity, but if you're in the rural areas, you don't even have electricity. Around the world, it's still pretty rural. And I'm reading this book, and he's talking about the wicked world that he lives in. And I'm thinking, wicked world? I'm thinking, I don't look back at 1915 as I do today, and I think wicked world. I think, wow, this guy would just flip a lid if he saw what we were dealing with today. Likewise, this is one I do recommend, Talbot, 1940. All right, now we do have telephones, but we still don't have TV in 1940. And Talbot's writing about his evil, wicked world in 1940. Do you think of the world as being super evil and wicked at 1940? I mean, I don't. I know it was, and there were, of course, wicked and evil people, a la World War II was about ready to start here, and I had already started in Europe. But, boy, it's like these guys would just flip a lid if they were living in our day today. So, when you read these books and you read them in the context of where you are today, here you are reading a book from an author who's writing about World War I's getting ready to start and his perspective on Daniel 7. And here's one here. World War II has already started in Europe, getting ready to start in America, and he's writing. But he has interesting things to say about the Seventh-day Adventists. Look with me here. On page 208, what does he say? Let us pause just here to expose the blasphemous heresy taught by the Seventh-day Adventists concerning this cleansing of the sanctuary. There we go. Blasphemous, heretical Seventh-day Adventists. But he goes on, and then he says this. Referring to Daniel 8:14, evidently William Miller and Miss White and their deluded followers overlooked the plain statements of the inspired record that 2,300 days were, well, evenings and mornings, page 209. Lastly, he says this, referring to Daniel 7:25. Let us pause here to state definitely that these words do not refer to the Pope of Rome, as a certain cult teaches, Seventh-day Adventists. For example, the Seventh-day Adventists hold that the Pope changed the Jewish Sabbath to the first day of the week, and they call this the changing of the times and the law. This is 10 years plus before Walter Martin came on the scene. Lewis Talbot is already calling the Seventh-day Adventists a heretical cult. But you know, it happened way before that. Here's a commentary from 1911, contemporary of Ellen White. I don't recommend this commentary. It's okay. What I really don't like about it is in Daniel chapter 7, when we have the Ancient of Days that's going to judge the fourth beast, he thinks the Ancient of Days is Christ. Well, I think he's confused. So, if you still want to get the book, you can get it, but understand that caveat. But I want you to look at what he wrote about Seventh-day Adventism on page 100 of his book. Look with me here. About Daniel 8:14. Such views and fanciful interpretations bring the study of prophecy in disrepute. We have special reference to the Seventh-day Adventist delusion. They teach abominable untruth that the Lord Jesus Christ did not enter into the holiest till the year 1844 had been reached, because this is, according to their reckoning, 2,300 years after Cyrus had issued the command to build the temple. That this is a denial of the gospel itself is self-evident. There we go. 1911. Ellen White was alive when A.C. Gaebling was writing his rebuke of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Good for him. Now here's the warning. This is why you don't buy commentary sets. Here's the knuckleheads, the unreliable, critical, liberal scholars. So, warning, warning, warning. But before I give you that warning, I want you to look at this scholar here. 1885. Daniel the Prophet in 9 lectures. A Reverend E.B. Pusey, British scholar, who also had to battle the crazy, wacky liberals of his day. Lecture 1, Sentence 1. He says this. The book of Daniel is especially fitted to be a battlefield between faith and unbelief. It admits of no half measures. It's either divine or an impostor. To write any book under the name of another and give it out to be his is in any case a forgery, dishonest in itself, and destructive of all trustworthiness. He goes on to say, lastly, in a word, the whole book would be one lie in the name of God. What he's writing about are there are these critical liberal scholars who wrote scholarly works who said, well, Daniel's not really by Daniel, and he didn't write it in the 500 BCs, and on and on and on. And what this British scholar just said, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, this is the dividing point. Because if you say that, then you're saying the book of Daniel's fake. So let me show you some scholars who say the book of Daniel is false. Here's 3 commentary sets right here. And you're going to see the pictures of these books on screen from these 3 commentary sets. Again, don't buy commentary sets because you're going to get knuckleheads like this in the commentary sets. So let's look at the first one here. Daniel, D.S. Russell, 1981, 1956 by Heaton, and 1912 by Driver. Let me make a comment about Driver. Driver is probably one of the most quoted critical scholars that I have ran across in all my books of Daniel. I think Driver must have had an air of academic, around him, because people cite him a lot, both critically, because of his, he's critical to Daniel, but then also in some cases some of his insights that he may have had on the book of Daniel in terms of languages and history, etc. But he is simply not to be trusted. Look at all these scholars. Daniel was written when? about the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, 164, 165 BC. Look at the second one in the middle by Heaton. Daniel was written by several anonymous sources. Wasn't that interesting? And what does Driver say? He says exactly the same thing. Several anonymous sources. We're going to go on to 3 more. And again, these are in all 3 of these here, right here I'm holding up, are in 3 very reputable series of commentary sets. Each, like, this set here can cost you easily $2,000. This set here, they have an Old Testament, this is the Old Testament library, and the New Testament library can likewise cost you $1,000. Same with this is called the ICC, the International Critical Commentary. But yet, on all these sets, their authors on Daniel, absolutely horrible, absolutely heretical. Look with me here on screen. First one here by Norman Porteous. And Norman here says that you can see Daniel written 164 BC. Same with James Montgomery, 160, 2nd century. And then the last one, 168 BC. All of them say that Daniel 7, the little horn is Antiochus Epiphanes. I mentioned earlier about the one scholar that I liked who just dismantled Montgomery. Here's Montgomery's 1927 commentary on Daniel. And the one book I held up earlier when I said he absolutely dismantled him, he dismantled this guy right here. Good for him. I absolutely loved it. I'm saving the worst for last. These are the worst 2 right here. Again, from very expensive commentary sets. This one here is the Word Biblical Commentary by John Goldingay and Daniel, and this is the Interpretation by Daniel by W. Shelby Toner. Let's look at what Mr. Toner said. Daniel, likely written in the 3rd century before Christ. So in other words, it wasn't in the 5th century. Several anonymous sources over a period of time. Daniel is the hero. Keep the word in mind. Hero, and these anonymous authors wrote about. And of course, Daniel 7, 1 through 8, the little horn is Antiochus Epiphanes. But look what he says on page 5 of this commentary. Daniel is a non-historical personage, modeled by the authors. That's why he says hero. The authors made a hero. They made this guy, they think, Daniel, he's our hero. So we modeled by the authors of the book after the ancient worthy, who was linked in the text of Ezekiel 14 to 20, about righteous Noah, righteous Job, etc. And it does mention Daniel there in Ezekiel. And there are commentators don't believe that it's the Daniel. And that's the point that this author is trying to make. Just as that reference to this mysterious Daniel is in Ezekiel, it's this same mysterious Daniel who is the author of Daniel, which really means there is no Daniel. Remember what that English scholar said. We either have the Word of God or we don't. And all these commentators thus far are basically saying the book of Daniel it's a forgery. Last one, Goldingay. Daniel 7, written during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Several authors, of course, Daniel 7, the little horn is Antiochus Epiphanes. But what this scholar here is reasoning is there's no way God would give Daniel a revelation predicting such events way into the future, which the people now couldn't use or understand. God, he wouldn't do that. He would give them things that they would know. Of course, he could do that, but he wouldn't do that. Therefore, he didn't do that. So therefore, Daniel is not a history to the end of the world. It's to Antiochus Epiphanes in 164 BC. Look what he says on page 321. It is difficult to see how the God of the Bible would reveal detailed events of the 2nd century to people living in the 6th century, although he could. Heresy. The heresy in just these 2 last we looked at is just equivalent to the heresy of Seventh-day Adventism, Ellen White, and the Great Controversy. Let's look at that same Great Controversy chart here. Upper left-hand corner, Daniel 9:25, Ezra 7:7 is used to start this whole fanciful, fake Bible chronological chart that Adventism have. Daniel 9, I did a whole video on Daniel, why that Daniel 9:25 and Ezra 7:7 is not the beginning to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. Just did a video on Daniel 7:25 to show, first of all, it's not the papacy. That's plain and clear. The Seventh-day Adventist chart is nothing more than Bible magic with its chief magician. You can see in the lower left-hand corner, Ellen White with her little magician hat on, and 1844 is just simply magic. The Adventist Bible chronological chart is fake and it's false, and I've been taking it down 1 point at a time.